Hey guys, this is Dave with Gazaudio, and today we are going to be taking a look at Dunu's new DTC800 dongle style DAC. And I will tell you right now, I like this device a lot, and it almost dethroned my favorite $100 dongle. And I say almost because in the end, there were a couple of key ingredients missing from the DTC800 that, if present, could have possibly edged it past the competition. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. So before we jump into this review, I just want to give a huge thank you to Timmy, because honestly, if it weren't for him, I don't even know if I would be where I am today, not just on this channel, but on my own personal channel, on the Audio In channel. So Timmy, thank you so much, man. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Not only are you just an amazing reviewer and an asset to this hobby, you're also a great friend, man, and just an incredible guy. And I wish you absolutely all the best. I have no doubt whatsoever that you will succeed in whatever it is that you set out to accomplish. And it's good to know, by the way, that you're going to be active or try and stay active in the community, because the community really desperately needs people like you. So best of luck, man. So out on my desk is everything that's included in the box. We have the DTC800, and they've also included a Type-C to Type-C cable, and then a Type-A to Type-C adapter. Now, as far as the pricing, they priced this at $99, and I cannot tell you how many Cybertruck and coffin references I've come across, obviously referring to its design and shape. Of course, based on the marketing material I've seen, it doesn't appear to be intentional, but who knows? I do think it's pretty cool. Regardless, it is built well. It says the housing is made from a single block of aluminum alloy, and it definitely does have a nice, solid, and robust feel and look to it. And I do like the matching cable as well. And then on the top, we have some branding, a status indicator light, of course, that changes colors based on the audio format that you're listening to. And then on the side are the 60-step physical volume buttons. We then have a Type-C input, and then on the other end, a 3.5 single-ended output, and then a 4.4 balanced output. So that's the outside. Now on the inside, we have dual CS43198 DAC chips, which can decode up to DSD256 and 32-bit PCM. Those are paired with dual SGM8262 op amps, which supply an impressive 450 milliwatts at 32 ohms out of the balanced output, and then 180 milliwatts at 32 ohms out of the 3.5 single-ended output, with up to 4 volts of level output. And then the signal-to-noise ratio out of the 4.4 is 126 dBs, while the single-ended output has a signal-to-noise ratio of 125 dBs. As far as compatibility, I did test it with several sources, including my phone, my PC, my laptop, and I had no problems at all. I just plugged it in and all of the devices picked it up right away, and I was able to play music with no issues. Now, as far as power efficiency and battery drain on my phone, I did notice a little bit of drain, but honestly, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It's basically about the same as most of my other devices. Okay, let's move on to the sound. So as usual, I did test the DTC800 with a wide variety of IEMs and headphones, from budget stuff all the way up to some of my higher end stuff. And then I also compared it with not only the other dongles that I have around $100, but also some of my more expensive devices as well. And I also recently received some other budget dongles in the last maybe week or two that land around this same price point, including the Blonde V1, Tantrum Luna, and then the SM-SL D10, which I recently reviewed. And I did do some comparisons with those as well. So we'll talk about the DTC800 with IEMs first. Now, as far as its general sound presentation, it does fall within the range of linear, but it does lean a little warm, and it reminds me of actually of the DTC480 a little bit as far as the way it has more of an analog type presentation. However, I do feel like this is maybe a little closer to neutral, at least to my ears. And it also reminds me of the Onyx XI1 as well, which this is my top dongle at $100 right now. So the DTC800 does lean away from a more analytical sound, and it takes on a slightly more neutral tonality or presentation. And that was consistent with both IEMs and full-size headphones. Now, something else I noticed was that the treble presentation was a little on the smoother side. Not that it was smoothed over or that it smoothed over the details. It still retained quite a bit of detail to keep that sense of clarity and resolution, but the focus seemed to be more on producing instruments naturally as opposed to being hyper detail focused. And then if we break things down a little further, we'll start with the bass. It does have really good bass extension. It also has a nice punchy and dynamic sound to it, especially with IEMs. And again, I will talk about dynamics with headphones. That's also pretty good. It has very good bass texture, good bass speed. The mid-range produces instruments naturally, and they also retain nice amounts of detail. However, they are maybe a little weightier, the instruments in their presentation. The treble presentation is also natural sounding, and while I would say, again, it might be a little on the smoother side as far as its overall presentation, I don't feel like anything's missing necessarily in terms of details or even micro nuances. Now, as far as technical performance, when I paired this with my i600s, my Hakuyas, and even with my Divas, this being a budget device, while I did feel like it performed quite good, I could definitely tell that these IEMs weren't necessarily performing at their best, because while I did feel like the soundstage width was good, where I noticed it lacking maybe a little bit was in its forward depth. Not that the presentation is flat. It does have some forward depth. It's just maybe a little more on the shallow side compared to some of my higher end devices. And then of course, I also tested for background noise using my 2020 Andromedas, and it was basically completely quiet. So the background was pretty much hiss-free and noiseless. Now, as far as use with full-size headphones, so this is something I just recently brought up in my review of the D10, and that was that typically at this price point, most devices land, as far as power output, they land anywhere between 100 milliwatts and 320 milliwatts of power output. And that's even some dongles over $100. And it's only been with some of the more recent releases that you're kind of starting to see dongles pushing into the 500 or even the 600 milliwatt territory, like the FIO KA17 and also the Onyx XI1. Now, of course, this isn't quite that powerful, but we are still talking 450 milliwatts, and that's still impressive for such a small device. Then, of course, we also have to take into consideration the 4 volts of RMS level output as well. But the question is, does the DTC800's additional power and that 4 volts RMS level output actually translate into better performance with full-size headphones like it does with the Onyx XI1 and the KA17? And the answer is yes, absolutely, it does. And the biggest improvement was primarily in its bass and mid-bass, specifically in dynamics and just the bass texture and bass speed. But it also retained many of the qualities that I experienced when pairing it with IEMs, as far as its detail levels and presenting instruments naturally and just having a nice transparent presentation in general. So for me, in this case, that additional power and level output did actually seem to improve the sound and translate into better sound overall with my higher end sets. Which brings us to comparisons. So as I had mentioned earlier, my top dongle right now at the $100 price point is the Xi1. And it's amazing with IMs, but the reason it impressed me so much was because it was giving the FiiO K17 a run for its money in regards to how well it drove my full-size headphones. But the KA17 is also $150, and I should clarify, I would still give the KA17 a very slight edge over the Xi1. But the reality is the Xi1 does a very good job pushing all of my headphones from entry-level stuff all the way up to my higher end stuff. And while I don't have anything that's necessarily extremely hard to drive, I do have the 350 ohm FT3s, the 300 ohm SV023s, my LCD3 2023s, and my Aria Stealths. And while these sets can perform pretty well on lower power devices like dongles, they definitely benefit from having more power and cleaner power. And there is definitely a noticeable improvement in performance when I pair these higher end sets with my reference level amplifiers. Regardless though, basically in the end, what it came down to was me trying to determine whether the Xi1 should remain my top pick for $100 or give it to the Dtc800, because their performance levels are basically, at the end of the day, they're the same with both IEMs and headphones. However, the Xi1 has more features than the Dtc800, adding not only a screen and a button that allows you to control playback, but also gives you additional control over some of the device's internal menu settings using the Edit player. So basically, the Xi1 does take a slight lead, not necessarily because of its sound performance, but because it just has more features. Now, if you just want something that's a little smaller and you don't need those extra features, then just go for the Dtc800, because again, it sounds basically the same. So bottom line is the Dtc800 is a very versatile and a very powerful device. And I love that now consumers have this option, a more compact and travel-friendly option out there for their full-size headphones. So that concludes my review of the Dunu Dtc800. If you're new to the Audio channel and you like our videos, please take a minute and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go a step further, you can also support us through our Patreon. I'll be sure and leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this review. Please like this video, please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.